has a letter on the agenda
Yeah.
to have that removed. He'll put it back on the agenda for next meeting if he intends to continue with it. But as you might know from the letter, it is involved with the sale of their property, and there's just some things they have to work out. So he's withdrawing the request temporarily.
So that's 4.3
Yeah.
that's being removed at the request of the property owner. Okay.
I have an amendment to propose as well. Regarding the Planning Advisory Committee, we have received a resignation to that committee, and I would like to table it as an agenda item to trigger the process for replacing that member.
Okay. So let's add that as 8.6. PAC membership. All right. So you have a freshly amended agenda. What is the wish of council?
I'll move the council approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Bain. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go on to consideration of delegations. Mr. Alexander.
We have the minutes?
Oh, sorry, the minutes of the last meeting, yes.
I'll move that they be approved as circulated, but I have a question about them.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Second that.
Seconder, Councillor Feeney.
So my question is that I'd like some clarification on is the item under SHAC, the South Shore Housing Action Coalition report. It was a discussion on short-term accommodations. And the minutes say that at the request of the mayor and council, Councillors Carver and O'Neill will prepare an agenda for a special meeting of council to discuss short-term accommodations, the implications of same on low-income housing, and the ways in which council might approach housing to ensure the stability of the community. I've just checked with Councillor O'Neill, and we both understood that you were to bring back some information on land trusts. So I just wanted some clarification.
I don't recall the discussion asking the two councillors to bring back on land trust, but we were discussing the Airbnb, the impact on short-term, or the impact of short-term rentals on low rental housing in particular, and it was my understanding that that is what you were going to provide information and advice to council on. That you did have access to some information and some studies on short-term rental and housing, low rent housing impacts. I didn't think it was on land trusts, but I thought it was as was expressed there.
And I'll just say, if I also had that recollection, but if you are looking to work on anything relating to housing, I do have a somewhat overdue report regarding a request for the feasibility of a town housing committee. And it's been kind of every time we talk about housing, I'm sort of adding to or changing the way that I want to bring that forward very soon. So maybe, I could sit down with you too, and we could at least make sure that anything is reflected in that report.
Yes. So
Okay.
just to clarify, did you say that you heard what the mayor heard, or what?
Yeah, and my
Councillor-
recollection was that it was about short-term housing. Yeah,
It's and I will just chirp in here because my very
and
clear
that meeting wasn't
recollection,
recorded.
right, is the same as Councillor Carver's in that it was specifically community land trust focused. So I find this very interesting.
Yeah,
But I'm happy that we fold it all into this report.
Yes,
that
I
you
think
are
that makes sense to do
discussing.
that. I think
Yeah,
that
so I'll
makes
send out
sense.
something and we can try to find a time to do that.
In the meantime, I'm sorry, it's the minutes, but I did want to see some clarification about which of you three are going to follow up on the contact with the mayor of Annapolis Royal or the CAO of Annapolis Royal about what they've done about short-term accommodations. It's not strictly about the minutes, but sort of.
Well, I wasn't going to, but in light of me working on this report and such, I can do that unless you want to, David.
No, I don't think it's necessary you can certainly do that, Mr. CAO.
Is only so that we know that one person is doing that, so that we know what Annapolis Royal has done in terms of regulating short-term accommodations.
Is CAO aware of how that topic came to be?
Yeah, because he was in the
I've seen all the
original email,
emails. Yeah, I'll look
Yeah.
back on them and I
Okay.
can get in touch with them.
Do you have a question on the
No,
motion?
I'm saying I'm gonna ask you a question.
Oh, no.
Okay, so that was my
Do you,
question.
did you, so there's no corrections on the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go on to our delegation and Mr. Grabowski. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Your worship, councillors. Who am I? My name is Dr. Alexander Grabowski. I'm a retired chemist. I've worked 34 years in chemical biological defense for the forces, and we retired as soon as I could. I live here half a year. That's as long as they allow us. We live on a comfortable pension. I have no need to sell you anything if the impression comes up, especially not a youth. Why am I here? I've learned working with youth myself, young people, that it's very, very important to form young minds, to form young individuals, to escape or to not run into traps when they do business later on in their grown life, having them to understand each other. So what I'm going to give you, not the history of Mahone Bay, I guess you might be a little more knowledgeable than I am on that, but I give you a short outlook on Lunenburg, and if some perspectives I'm seeing, some options, and if time allows, a 3-minute video giving you an atmosphere of how the city looks. So, oh yeah, that's the way it is here. I told about me. I'm going to talk about the perspective, a little bit of the history. I give you facts and numbers and the international activities of Lüneburg in Germany. I live close to that city, by the way, so I'm not from the other end of the world, which is 500 kilometers considered by us. I'm going to give you what I think is to gain for both sides. The picture, if time provides, some options for a way ahead. Starting with the perspective. The green thing here, that's Germany compared to Canada. That's all of it. And this is Germany in Europe in the middle. And in the middle of Germany, the red dot, that is, come on, that's Lüneburg. We are pretty centered in northern Germany. First settlements more than 150,000 years ago in that area. So we have a little bit of a history. The city itself was mentioned more than 1,000 years, more than 1,100 years ago. And it was, by then, I think the most powerful and one of the most wealthiest city in the then world. We had already, in the 13th century, sorry I caught a cold, Lüneburg had more than 14,000 inhabitants, which was gigantic for them. And it had the salt monopoly. If you see these red dots, those were all the Hanse cities. And all these blue lines, these were the the merchant routes, and they were all controlled by the Hanse. They didn't need arms, they didn't need weapons, they had the money. And they had the ships. That was Lüneburg then. Then they quite early embraced the Reformation. It was the Reformation center in northern Germany. And it later on was part of the Principality of Braunschweig-Lüneburg, meaning the sovereign was the English king. And that's as you know, that's the way why German settlers got here. Because German blood was cheaper than English blood to settle an empty area. It was an Englishman who told me that quote. It's not from me. Lüneburg has nearly 80,000 inhabitants. It's a very young city. A lot of university students. They have a University of Applied Sciences. And there are 3 very big German cities close around Hanover, 750,000. Hamburg, nearly 3 million. Berlin, over 3 million. All with a train in less than 2. Hanover, Hamburg, less than an hour. Berlin, 2.5 hours by train. The crime rate is one of the lowest in northern Germany. And it's a very attractive hometown due to its excellent transport connections. Many people who work in the big cities like to live in a smaller city, and that's why they live in Lüneburg. A lot of cultural activities. The Bach Days, our Bach choir, is world famous, and they do a lot of traveling too. Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival, one of the large classic music festivals in Northern Europe, and the provincial music days. Lüneburg has several twin cities, Japan, in France, in Estonia, and in Kulmbach. Well, actually, it is in Bavaria, but we consider it Germany. So we have a German sister city, which is very rare. And its membership in the Hanseatic League, Climate Protection Cooperation, and the Alba Charta. So let's see if we get there to the video. So, what do I think we could gain, both sides? We could highlight the joint or common heritage. I understand there have been bonds formerly, like 20 years ago. There was an exchange program, I think run by Mr. Aulenbach in Sunnybrook, who travel to and fro with delegations of kids, and this is always a thing connected to people. If the person can't do it anymore, it dies. That's sad, but it's the way it is. There could be a way to better understand the other culture through very low cost things like joint arts projects, exchanges, not only of persons or exhibitions. And the aim would be a deeper understanding for the other nation's characteristics. We all have said we have something in our national character, and it helps a lot if you know how to understand the other nation. It helps you a lot in, well, basically at the end of the day, not going to war, because you have a basic of talking to each other. So that's what I meant when he's saying foster the next generation's intercultural skills. For my meaning, having worked with young people a lot, my focus would always be not my personal focus on the people we have, but on the people we will have or we want to have. Because these will be there in 20 years. I will be gone in 20 years. But these who are now 18, they will pave the road in 20 years. There's a lot of technological, scientific knowledge to gain, like wastewater treatment, non-fossil energies. All that is done in a very modern and new and financially well-equipped University of Applied Sciences. It's also strengthening for the tourism industry. Lüneburg is a tourism center. They basically, I guess about 50% of the working spaces or workplaces are financed by tourism, one way or the other. The Lüneburg Heather is the region, aside from the Alps, everybody dreams of. And more, that's just a couple of things. What could be concrete examples, like exchange of student groups? When would we do that? Talk to the principals, who would be selected, upon which criteria? Would it be a group, would it be a sports group, would it be an academic group, or just this and that class of that and that year? How would we fund that? I know that we have funding. I guess there are ways to fund this here too. I'm not talking about 500 people going to and fro every 4 weeks. I'm like Councillor Rissa was one student who spent a year in Germany, and he still speaks German after all these years. Further project ideas mean maybe a choir visit, cultural exhibitions, youth ambassadors, which would then just, if there would be a scientific exposition from the Lüneburg High School, from one of the high schools, there would just probably the youth ambassador be here and hold the exhibition. So that would be very affordable. And what is important for us, emergency preparedness in rural areas. Lüneburg has one of the highest fire rates due to the Heather region in all of Germany. And there is no water there, so this is the emergency preparedness there. Or if we have a big storm, people are cut off for days on end, like here. So that said, in a nutshell, I would propose the way ahead would be evaluate what's in there, talk to me, talk to others, talk among yourselves, then identify a working body, which, as you will see in a moment from my point of view, would be from this side of the governments of cities or this government, whatever, just one person. And on the aside from that, there would be the Charles Shaw Genealogical Society, the German Canadian Cultural Association. There would be the Lions Club. The Lüneburg Lions are interested in that. There are 2 or 3 councillors on the City Council of Lüneburg who are Lions, and they said yes, that was something we could very well imagine to support, to foster. And I don't have to name them all. There are a lot of heritage organizations here, volunteers. That will definitely be volunteers, like people who don't have anything to do because they're retired, and or stop the thing. This is on you to decide, and because I just like diagrams, I love diagrams. I made this diagram. This council, the German council, evaluate the options that what I just showed you. Set up working group on both sides. These working groups, they would work together through the internet, and at the end they would come up or not come up with a project list and the proposal for a mutual agreement. Yes, this is what we could do. We found A, B, C, D, E, and with that they would come back either yes, no, we didn't find, or green, yes, we found something that you could do together.
We have a question, Councillor?
Oh, sorry.
I just want to clarify, thank you very much. I just want to clarify your use of the term council. Does that
City
mean
council.
a municipal council?
Yeah.
Okay, not a citizen council of
No,
citizens.
no.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify.
No, no.
Thank you.
Hopefully they come back with a proposal for a mutual agreement. And what is always good for those who represent the people, in this gray area, there's no council involvement. Setting up the working groups, there would just be one person say, well, go, find us 5 people or 6 or 7. And then develop options and then report back.
That's our 10 minutes.
Okay.
Does council have any questions?
Have you taken this to Parkview School? I mean, Mr. Ockenbach, they used to call him. He was a teacher at Parkview, wasn't he, Joe?
That's true. I think I know that Parkview has a annual European class trip exchange program. It's usually in March, and they have 40 to 50 students that participate every year. To my knowledge, because both my girls just graduated and had participated in the program over the last 4 or 5 years, I believe that the school has hit almost every country in Europe with the exception of Germany. So it's a little unusual, other than the flight into Frankfurt and then on to or Berlin and then and to move to other countries. But I think that the EF Tour school program is very well established already, and has really good funding mechanisms. So that might be a good place to start, because they have all the infrastructure at the school in Bridgewater already, and that might be able to accelerate the agenda.
I think that could be a building block for the whole thing, not the whole agreement. Definitely a building block. From what I read, I think 2 days ago in the newspaper, that there's a group of young students now going over to Europe, and they have 10 days. No, sorry, that does not work.
Yeah.
You cannot. You have to be at a place for at least 10 days at one place to get a little impression on how things are going. If you want to understand it, you need a year. So there's.
Councillor Bean?
Yeah, I just, very general question, has this proposal has been made to the town of Lunenburg?
Yes, and the town of Lunenburg exchanged a letter of intent with the city of Lüneburg,
Okay,
and then I got the hint that I better not ask for another answer
okay.
to save
Just
embarrassment.
curious.
I think the two arguments were we don't really, we don't have any German relations. There is no common history, not a whole lot. Okay, fine. And the other was, well, we're too small, which I can understand. But Lüneburg explicitly said we can tune that down to any level that is wanted.
Well, if Lunenburg thinks they're too small, we're like 40% of the size of Lunenburg. But did you have a question, Councillor?
I guess I had a small comment. Our family, I live up on Main Street, and our family has for some years, not this year, but previous years, have been part of the International Student Program, which is a very large, very well established, funded, structured program through the schools for both junior school and high school. And we've had a number of students from all over the world. And one of the things that I found interesting when we joined that program is it seemed to be a one-way program where we would accept as a Nova Scotia School Board students from the world, but I didn't see our students having the benefits that these international students were gaining. And I wondered, as I was listening to you talk, if you have made any approach to the school board to connect with that. Caroline Bolivar-Getson, for example, is leading that program for this region. And I wonder, as both with both hats, as her in her role as leading the international student program, and her role as the mayor of the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, if she would have some thoughts for you.
Well, I also talked to in Bridgewater, I talked to the council of the MODL, and I have not heard back from them. So,
And I wonder if that one venue, and again taking the approach through the school board, which is very well set up, that would be a trajectory that might have some traction.
I wonder if it might be appropriate for our CAO to reach out to his counterpart in Lunenburg and find out exactly what communications happening between the town and our peers across the ocean, and just find out what the state of affairs are with regard to municipality to municipality, and then maybe can come back to council at a later date and just give us a briefing on our understanding of where things stand between Lunenburg and Lunenburg.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Councillor, Kirby.
Well, I had a question and a comment for
okay,
Mr. Graf.
do it as part of the question. Go ahead.
As part of the discussion. So my comment is that when I asked the question about council, because of what had gone before, the involvement of people, community people, I was beginning to think, this is a project made up of community people in the community, not necessarily of municipal council.
It will be.
Right. And that sort of ties in with my instinct that it at this point it's not, I don't feel it as a municipal issue yet. If later we were invited or approached with, something more substantial, it would be a different question. That's just me. I'm speaking for myself. Now I've forgotten what my question was. Oh, I know. What is it that Lunenburg wants out of the project?
Exactly the mirrored image from what I gave you. That's exactly their interest. In Germany, I was born in '53. My father-in-law, they lived through the whole war, through all the atrocities. They lived through all the Cold War, which seems to be coming back again because those old people who remember it die. We remember it, but my son is already, come on, that's so long ago. And the cultural, the knowing who is on the other side of the border, how these people think, how they act, that is, to my extent, extremely important to avoid these conflicts.
So they're seeking a connection on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, because they have already had a lot of connections.
Yes.
But mainly in Europe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan.
And in Japan, that is
Japan.
economically based.
Correct me, but I thought at one point we're not just talking about a school scenario. We're talking about culture. We're talking about the arts. We're talking about education, where you may involve some school kids going into an exchange program. It's a multifaceted thing. It's not just focused on the school children. Which is what we're doing now with the IBS in South America, right?
That would be up to these working group members you see on the screen to see what can we do, what are the options, and then report back, and then it's on the council or councils. Perhaps the three towns could go together with the MODL. That would be the optimum. To say, well, yes, okay, we go this way, or no, we don't.
We have a motion moved and seconded.
Can I just get some clarity on the motion? So staff to look into the status of Lunenburg's
Just to make
contacting Lunenburg, just in terms of are they pursuing it essentially? Is it
just to find out, I guess, the status of their exchange of paperwork and the MOU and whatever.
I just wanted to confirm
right.
that the report at this point isn't about the feasibility of
No.
the proposal. It's just about what Lunenburg's up to.
Right.
Yeah.
Before I talked to anyone on this side of the ocean, I talked to the personal assistant of the Lord Mayor of Lüneburg, and asked him how does the city of Lüneburg look at that. So what I gave you here is all not officially endorsed, but this will be supported by Lüneburg. So this approach it has a stamp from the city of Lüneburg.
All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We'll get an answer back to you.
Would be very nice to get an answer, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, that is the end of our delegations. We now have correspondence
Thanks.
Thank you.
for action items. Number one, Andrew Tanner, a note, Saltbox Brewing Company request for wayfinding signage. I know there's been some email traffic around on that. Do you have some questions or comments?
Well, I
or-
did, and I don't recall seeing a specific response to it. I think when I, I think we've been talking in a number of meetings and about wayfinding signs I think since I arrived in council, so over a year. And I think it's always
When I arrived in council.
no,
All right.
well, I feel that it's something that seems to be pretty well understood that it's going to happen and it's a good idea, and I didn't understand, I guess, the mechanism for how to make the decisions about the wayfinding signs, and I wondered if that was possibly could be tied into our recent arrangement around communications, or I wanted further information from the CAO to
Yeah, I'm
understand
happy
this.
to comment on it,
Thank you.
and sorry for, I know you did send an email, but maybe my comments now verbally can serve for this for everybody.
You respond to all of my other emails,
Yeah,
Dylan.
try
This is
to.
not at all a criticism.
So yeah, I mean, as far as this goes, like obviously in the year that I've been here, it was identified right away, both by staff, as an issue that's come up for the town, and also in the first meeting that we had with Fran, the chamber was quick to identify it as a priority for them. They have a wayfinding signage committee, which is a subcommittee of the chamber. We have attempted to meet with that committee, I'd say 4 times probably since I've been here at least. I say attempted because it has not been well attended on the part of the members of the subcommittee, Andrew in particular, who is on that subcommittee. So the chamber continues to maintain that it is a priority for them. When we entered this year, we at the Economic Development Committee level, if you'll recall, in working on our action plan, we had 4 items that we talked about working with the chamber on. And we narrowed it down to 2 items that the chamber appeared to be in a position to move forward on. And we essentially suggested that wayfinding be something that could wait until they're ready to move ahead with it. And when we were in our budget process, we put down a proposed amount for next year's budget just to kind of flag, it wasn't in the budget, but in the discussions, that wayfinding was coming and was likely to be a request for funding from the town. So we've kind of seen it out there as something that's probably coming to next year's budget discussions. We did go back to the chamber because the summer's ended and Fran has a little bit of, not this weekend, but starting to have a little bit of time to breathe, and said, do you anticipate being able to get your committee together and actually come up with some recommendations that council would have time to talk about before we're into next year's budget? And she said, absolutely, it's still a top priority for us. We'll get together as soon as we can get everybody in the room. And I assume that includes Andrew. So I know that his request is made because he has been waiting for a strategy, just like everybody else. But at the same time, he could be part of developing that strategy. And I think we've been very clear to the chamber that, the town is not opposed to signage to promote, obviously what we're concerned about is proliferation. And there are some risks, and as traffic authority, I think if this request was accepted, and then the next request was accepted, and the next request was accepted, that is why we're trying to come up with a strategy to have uniform, consistent, and relatively minimum signage, so we don't overwhelm visitors with trying to figure out where to go. So that's my background, I guess, to the issue. I hope that answers the question.
I'd like a follow-up question to that. In Andrew's letter, it refers to requesting the ability to install several more shops ahead signage. Do you have a number of signs that he is wanting to install and locations?
I just have the letter at the
You have the
moment.
letter.
When Andrew had raised this previously at the staff level, we suggested that he talk with the chamber subcommittee about incorporating this into the wayfinding plan. And my understanding is that they, I don't believe, had a real chance to talk over the summer months. So now he sent the request directly.
If I can,
I'm
sorry, just as a concluding statement, I feel that is the way that this could be addressed, I think, most effectively, is through the wayfinding committee,
The chamber's
the
wayfinding.
chamber, the chamber.
Clearly.
Now, in fairness, that discussion with the chamber has been going on for some years,
Okay,
okay?
So what's
So-
the stall? What is the? Oh, I'm sorry, what is the delay? What's holding it
I
up?
mean, I can't speak for, I think everybody who signed up for that subcommittee is interested, but this is not their primary job, and so I think they just had trouble making priority of it.
And not a good time of year for them to have to
But-
sit in committee.
But Andrew should be hustling them directly rather than us, I think. But may I ask a question now? Is he?
Are you asking the chair if you can ask?
Yes,
a
may I ask a question? Asking the chair, sorry. Eyes to the mayor. Is he permitted to install signs? I mean, would he have to have our permission? Would he be allowed just to go ahead and install signs?
Well, no, I mean,
But
you
we don't-
can't put off premises signage.
Only on his own property.
Yeah, yeah.
On his own property.
So, I mean, this is a particularly unusual request too, because usually off-premises signage on other private property is also regulated, but this is a request for town property, so, you know, typically the town would be the ones to decide, but we do have another example where a similar sign was permitted, so I can't say that it's without precedent.
Just to further on that question, would he then be permitted to ask one of the other shops closer to the middle of town to put a sign on their property, pointing to more shops
I have to
ahead?
check on, in the land use bylaw, normally there's a prohibition on off-premises signage, but I
But
may
just
be
more
blurring
shops
it
ahead.
with other land use bylaws I have known in the past.
It's just more shops ahead, it
I
doesn't
know
specify a
your
business.
predecessor was.
Well, that's
was
true.
Quite rabid about not even allowing me to put a flea market sign for my lot on Carl's lot directly.
Yeah, maybe more shops ahead would get through, and that's the
Yeah,
question that we'd have to
so
ask.
that
Heather,
might be an
yeah.
option for him. to
It might be,
offer.
yeah, and Heather would be the
Two
one.
things. There's
Drive off the 103 at exit 10
Put
Right.
one there.
and see the signage.
it's difficult to put signage on telephone poles, as you all know. There's regulatory reasons why that
Yeah.
sometimes can't be permitted, and structural issues and engineering issues. So, but I'm assuming that if there was a comprehensive plan sponsored by the chamber, that the council would be totally amenable to listening to it and making accommodations
That's
where
what we've been-
possible.
that's
So
what we've been waiting
I'm
for.
sure they're aware of that, but I think Councilor Carver made the point well already.
We're not looking for blinking
No.
neon signs, but some kind of a consistent approach to letting people know what's where.
But so in response to Mr. Tanner's note, I'm suggesting that we would get back to him and encourage him to follow up with the committee. Right.
I think that's
That's
appropriate.
just seems like
Councillor
No,
Payne?
I mean, I agree what was just said there, and what everybody said. To me, it's just not a big ticket item, so I don't know why it's sitting on the shelf.
On whose shelf? The chamber shelf?
Whoever shelf it's sitting on.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like it's a $10,000 project. Sam,
No,
you
I mean,
crank
the
out
main-
those signs for nothing, really. You know,
The
so
main issue is deciding what to do.
I agree
Yeah.
completely. But when there's a few dollars involved, it should be pretty easy to decide. That's my point.
Well, the committee has to meet. The committee doesn't meet, they don't get anything done.
That's right.
Why just
We
let us
will
meet?
suggest that he talk with the chamber. He's already on the committee. He's a
Yeah.
member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to make a motion that we write back and say that?
yes, happy to,
Yeah, and I'll
happy
second
to
it.
do that.
And Councillor Bain seconded it. You have the motion? All in favor? Now that we've got all the signs sorted out,
That's good dancing.
look at the
Good
Mahone
looking.
Bay Legion Swing Band. They're inviting us to partner on a centennial fall or winter dance.
Sounds good.
The band's contribution will be to set up the stage, including lighting, and perform at no cost to the town. The town's anniversary committee will organize the dance, run the Legion, run the bar, also offer one or two members to be part of the organizing committee. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Sounds great.
So they just would like a date from us.
We just need to.
Well,
Can we accommodate the rental?
Do we have the funding in our centennial budget to accommodate it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been continuing to anticipate having a late fall, winter event of some kind. Obviously, the Legion Band has some interest in having it at the Legion, and we have in the past talked about the possibility of having an event at Mahone Bay Center. So we might end up, not necessarily doing as many events, but we don't have a plan for exactly what events to have. And we do have a bit of budget that was for centennial events in the fall, winter. So,
Mayor,
I think
my
I can spare a few $100s.
How would that work though with us running the bar?
So my suggestion would be that there might be an
Don't sell
organization that would want to operate a bar and keep the proceeds. So maybe we could team up with
a
someone.
Legion, probably.
I'd be shocked if the Legion wanted to give up the bar.
I was gonna say, yeah, I would think they would want
Third
to run the bar
party,
and keep their
that's
profits.
one of their money makers.
Mayor, I also note item 4.6, and it seems like this would be an elegant opportunity to maybe combine some of the outcomes of 4.6 plus this event and combine, some presentation and some acknowledgement at that event. And there's
Yes.
some nice synergies between these two items.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
So what they don't say is whether this dance is 1919 themed.
Like a costume.
100th anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to see
Yeah.
that.
Old music. I'm
Yeah.
sure they've got it.
Yeah, well, if the Legion's the right
We
place
need 'em
for a
right.
1919
We'll all go looking like
theme.
Mayor Wurst. That could make it really interesting though, because then they did that in 2004, I think, didn't they, for the
The costume.
250th
Yeah.
anniversary of the town,
It's costumes.
the founding of the
Those
town.
costumes go back a lot further than.
Oh yeah, yeah. This would be 100 years ago.
Yeah. It's actually
Is anybody
1919 's pretty
watching
fashionable
Peaky
right now.
Blinders? There you go. There's the costume niche that you want to get stuck into. Well, what is the will of council?
Well, do we have a centennial committee as such? You're the committee.
Yeah, I mean, staff have handled most of it. We've had steering committees set up when
Paul
needed,
Kelly.
so we have a project which Joe is on. So we could set up a little steering committee for this, or this could just go to staff and we could report it back on your regular meeting agenda.
Yeah, I think they're talking about asking for a couple of reps to be part of the overall
Yeah, it's
organizing
like we do with the
committee.
book. We do the same kind of like a council member and a staff person kind of thing, if council is interested.
They have, the Father Christmas has a dance too, don't they? They used to.
I think they used to.
Used to, I don't think they had one last year.
I'm just thinking of date, and that could be discussed by our committee.
Well,
I think it's a good idea, and
Me too.
got some time, spare time.
so is that a motion to
I was
add
so
this to the
moved
venue
that,
of our centennial
The
celebrations?
Centennial
So
Committee,
moved.
okay.
Okay,
With the addition of the suggestion under 4.6.
yes,
Including
Yeah.
recognition of Michael
Okay.
O'Connor
all right.
at the bandstand.
Have a heart. Where are we? We're
So,
so we're
There's
directing
a challenge
staff.
in doing that if we
Well,
haven't
Yeah.
made that
I think-
motion yet.
Well,
Oh,
what we can do, I think, is we've got a motion on the floor,
Well, secondary, yeah.
no seconder yet.
And some clarity missing too.
We'll start over in a second.
Give- some words.
The motion on the floor is to appoint, to add this to the venue of our centennial celebrations, and that staff will participate with these people, okay, to
Dates
plan
and
it.
times. And,
Yeah,
Then
we have to
when we
figure out
get
what
down to
organized
four
the
point
dance
six,
Okay.
if we support that, then the group can find a way to blend the
Blend them
two
together.
activities together.
So move.
Okay, so who is seconding Councillor Carver's? Councillor Feeney is.
And
This
just
is-
quickly in discussion, we don't really know quite what they mean by organize the dance, so I'm going
Yeah.
to reserve the possibility that we will come back and say that there are some things that are going to be challenging, or maybe there's
Okay,
other outside folks that would like to help if that
Yeah.
really becomes a bigger thing.
You got
So-
ticket sales and all that.
Especially if we go with the 1919 theme, I'm not volunteering
that's-
staff to
that's a-
coordinate that, but somebody might want to in the community. So.
it might be the hook that gets more people to, because the last couple of events like this at the center, I don't think were particularly well attended.
I think that the item 4.6, or pardon me, I think it's
4.3?
4.6,
4.6.
Yes.
would provide an ancillary theme above and beyond the 100th year anniversary that will
Okay,
to work up interest.
okay, okay. All right. So, on the motion, that's been duly seconded, all in favor? Good. Thought you weren't gonna have anything. All right,
I'm sure she's been worrying about that tonight.
so that's it for Ms. Fishback's thingy. Kristen O'Keefe is taken off the table. 4.4, Karen Pinsent, Father Christmas Festival, request to plant a town Christmas tree.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded.
Mayor, I'd like to
Is
talk.
there any discussion?
Yeah, so I'd like to.
Question, is it gonna be the same spot where the tree usually is put?
Roughly over there, and it eventually would become the tree that we decorate, right?
But while it's still short, you're gonna have a big tree?
If I may.
Yeah, you certainly may.
The tree that they have sourced is about 6.5, 7 feet tall. So there may be some opportunity this year, but in the meantime, their proposal is to sort of decorate kind of some of the other trees in that area.
I see, okay.
But yeah.
And where's the tree been located?
Where are they looking to purchase it from?
Yeah.
There's a nursery. They had gotten some advice from Tom Ernst, who's worked with the chamber over the last several years, to donate a tree. So they talked to him, and he was in favor of this after the last couple years, the incidents, and he's directed them. There's a specific type of tree that he has directed them to, and they found it at a nursery, I believe, in the valley. They were looking for a
Oh,
specific one.
good, great. Councillor Finn?
Mayor, I'm a bit concerned about not the Christmas tree. No one loves Christmas trees more than I do, but I am concerned about the location. And the context is really around even natural items blocking the view plane in the open shore section of the harbor, and especially anything that would preclude visibility either A, from the three churches out to the water, or from the water back towards the three churches. So it's one of those things where the tree goes up and then it comes down 3 months later and it's no big deal. But if a permanent tree, especially a tree like this, I'm assuming is going to grow quickly and going to be very large within, say, 15 years.
65 feet.
So I do think that particular location, it could be problematic down the road where we have a very substantial obstruction to traditional view planes. And maybe I'm certainly supportive of the donation and supporting the tree. I'm just not sure about that particular location. Maybe by the bandstand or somewhere else. But I am very concerned about anything in that area of town that blocks view planes, and as well makes it more difficult for parking and so on and so forth. But just throw that out there for contemplation.
Also, who will take care of the tree, like trimming it and so on and so forth? You know, not trimming it for Christmas, but keeping it. It's not just going all, it's not going all over the place.
Mr. Ernst has a crew for that to do it all summer.
Well, I'm pretty familiar with the type of tree he's talking about. They don't want to take that much maintenance.
Okay,
Not when they're open growing.
okay. Councillor O'Neill?
Trees
just
growing
wanted-
under a big canopy are a problem. That's open growing, so I wouldn't anticipate other than very little.
Yeah, I wanted to share my concern for planting a permanent tree that is intended to be, according to this letter, I mean, it's going to be a gorgeous tree. It'll be 65 feet tall, 20 meters for those of us born
How long?
after.
Is that
Come
gonna
on.
take?
Where on this?
Sorry.
Where on
Where's
this?
the other one?
And it's going to be a very large tree. And the other thing about planting a tree of that stature in the open is, excuse me.
Sure.
The other thing that I've learned recently through some conversations with talking with trees and discussing tree planting with Melissa Labrador, who was in Mahone Bay and Jubilee Park with the mayor and some of the councillors to plant trees, is that I'm understanding that it's important to plant trees in clusters so that there is windbreak to protect the trees as they're growing, and the danger of trees blowing down is vastly increased when a single tree is planted in the absence of other surrounding trees. And the bandstand, it would seem to me, is a sheltered location, also on the water, and I just wanted to support Councillor Feeney's idea.
If I may, so there's a question about where on the picture and your comment about planting it in the open. Where they want to plant it is over in the vicinity of the flagpole.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that there are trees in there, and they've spent a lot of money on Christmas lights twice. So they they want to keep it protected and stuff well. So they are thinking of putting it in
There
where
are
the
some
trees
mature
are.
trees there.
Yeah, where the trees already are there. So I don't know what that does to your point, Councillor Feeney, but to your point, Councillor O'Neill, they are looking at a place where there are already trees for that.
Yeah, that little section of land, which belongs to the town in that the owners have the intent long ago to donate it to the town, and it's still not in our name. But that piece of land is currently home to a bunch of trees, as Mo said, and I've always wondered if we came to that point, are we going to re-landscape it and remove those trees? Because obviously they're growing every year. Some of them aren't really going to get that big, but the town would do well to kind of think about that little piece of parkland between the two parking lots when deciding will it have trees or will it not have trees, because there, yeah, as Mo says, there are
Is the
already trees.
location pictured in this image, Dylan?
Yeah, it is. I just I'm struggling a little bit to. I wish I could make out the flagpole.
Yeah, I almost feel like this must have been
Too
tidied
old?
up or something because I don't even see the flagpole.
This is the image from the province's website. So 1 second here.
Flagpole's right in front of the Lutheran church, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So that where the
So the
existing
little low shrub, it's gonna be somewhere where we had our pictures taken.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
There's a little piece of land, it's all
It's in
grass
between
there.
the two. Here.
Yeah.
that's substantially
So-
far away from where we have the Christmas tree
Yeah.
lighting each year.
So would it
Folks,
be
this is
fair
a
to say that
Christmas
it
tree.
includes, if we look at that picture, would it be fair to say that a tree 65 feet tall would include a significant portion of at least one of the churches?
Well, it
Are
really
Yeah,
is
of course it
between
would.
the two churches, but depending on the angle, of course. Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Like I'm losing my mind over an ice cream store. So I mean,
Yeah.
a 65-foot tree kind of dwarfs that, right?
In all fairness, Councillor Feeney, I'm not sure if you and I are going to see any 65-foot tree there ever, to tell you the truth. But I mean, we're
Fair enough.
going through a process now where we're planting trees because of the
Can't advocate.
the visual benefit and the health benefit and the environmental benefit of having trees, and we're going to leave them away from the water side because it's the picture that we just want to see three churches in. I don't see it myself that it's going to be that much of a detractor to have that tree there, and I think in time it will become the town Christmas tree. Even in the middle of July, that's what it'll end up being referred to, the town's Christmas tree. Anyway, we do have a motion on the floor, moved and seconded.
Read the motion again, please.
The council approved the request from the Father Christmas Festival to plant a town Christmas tree.
Doesn't say where.
Details to be confirmed.
Well, I think we're just assuming that they would then stick with the location that they proposed.
Okay.
Come on,
Well,
tree people.
well,
You love trees.
I'm certainly prepared to vote for that motion. And you know, the folks that it's everybody's town, it's everybody's view plane, and it is a natural obstruction. Better than a non-natural obstruction, fair enough. So, but I just want to be kind of consistent,
Yep.
and at least around this table, we all understand where I'm coming from.
There's an obstruction.
There's an obstruction.
There you go.
See the
There's the flagpole.
There's the flagpole.
Sorry, I had to pick the one where you hit it.
So it's sort of off a bit from the Lutheran church.
So
Depending on the
You
angle.
know where we had our pictures taken?
Right there.
Right
Yeah,
there. That,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
no,
grassed
I
area.
know, but I'm trying to figure out what it looks like from the water. And
If you're looking at it from
Depends whether
Oakland side,
you're
it's
an
not
Oakland
coming
or-
really by the
How high do you think that pole is though? 30 feet?
Yeah, about 32 feet.
Stick a 60-foot tree up there. Anyway,
So one thing that does come through with these pictures, though, is how treed the area is. I mean, like
Yeah.
really, the more
Behind
we
the
look at this,
churches.
well, then there's a few that are in
Front,
front.
yeah.
There's
There's
one
few,
right in
yeah.
front. Yeah.
Do you think that the Lutheran Church has a perspective on this? I mean, a thought, an opinion, I suppose. And does that count?
Well, someday it's going to be our land.
Someday.
I think
might
it
have
depends
to
on
die.
the
Supposed to
angle
have been
that
done
you're
in
that
June,
you're
yeah.
standing at as to whether the Lutheran Church would be concerned about it or anyone else would be. If you stand on one side or the other, this is kind of the straight on tourist special where they get that postcard view of the three churches.
it's a
So
model.
it's gonna end up in
picture.
between the two churches, basically, or it should, if it's from that angle.
Okay,
I think
Let's go.
we've taken
call
all.
for the
We
question.
beat this baby to death.
Okay, all in favor?
Not quite.
Motion's carried. Unopposed?
I guess I'm abstaining, which means I'm opposing, because
Okay.
I can't.
Okay,
Motion's carried.
If it is 65 feet and decorated to the top, it will look like quite something in the
Whoa.
churches. But
Karen Pinsent and Nancy Petrie are requesting to hold the third annual Father Christmas Mahone Bay Reindeer Fun Run.
So move we give
I would second that,
approval.
Your Honor. Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Now. Do we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded, Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Motion's carried.
They're expecting over 450 participants.
Yeah.
We had
Has
almost
everyone
that
here,
last
has
year.
everyone here been able to attend that event?
Yeah,
Really
every
has.
year.
It's quite
absolutely
something.
hilarious.
I haven't gotten to it yet. So
Oh.
The streets are full.
Number 4.6, Mahone Bay Legion Swing Band's request to name the bandstand the Michael O'Connor Memorial Bandstand.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Moved by Councillor Carver, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. On the question?
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
And I apologize if I'm just a little bit behind on this topic. Can someone describe to me, and I have to say I'm certain that this is a very worthy person, so I just want to be very clear about that. I wondered what the process was in order to select this individual. Was there a process, a panel? How did this name get proposed over other
Councillor
possible?
Bain
I
is
can just speak to that because I was approached by Bob Weld.
And who is Bob Will, John? Councillor
Well,
Bain?
Bob Weld lives in West Avers Beach. He's been, I guess you might call it, chair of the ratepayers down there for
Mm-hmm.
the fire hall. He's attended some of the meetings.
Yeah.
I know him personally because of curling. He plays in the band.
The Legion
sings
Swing
in-
Band.
He
He's
sings in that choir that travels around town.
Yeah.
And has, been in the band for years. And the band really held a meeting and came to him regarding, because he was quite familiar with Mahone Bay as opposed to some of the other band members.
And Michael O'Connor, of course, was a member of the band for a long time.
Michael kept the band alive.
Yes.
He was the
It had
founder of it.
failed a few different times.
Didn't he start the music program in the school?
Yes, he
Yes, he
did.
did,
So
Yeah.
a lot of kids were exposed to and had a chance to play in the school band because of Michael.
Even in
And
the
in this
last
band.
number of years, Michael hand wrote out everything for the band. Like, he didn't even come in here and have a photocopy. Like, he would write the music out for each instrument. I mean, and never really got any kind of recognition, along with the museum, along with the church, and along with
Yeah,
everything
he
else
was
he's
one of the
done in
key
this town.
But
So
it-
was there a selection process? No, it was brought forward by the band itself. And I guess I was the conduit.
And in particular, it recognizes his contribution to the musical life, if you will, of the town for a long time.
I think he played taps at Remembrance Day for close to 40 years.
Oh, it's been a long time, far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone, for telling me
the
Okay.
letter also notes his connection to the bandstand itself, which is interesting. It didn't come up in this discussion.
Now, I'll just make one further comment. I get the fact that they'd be looking for some kind of a plaque that would be attached to the bandstand.
Plaque of
So I
fixed.
think we would kind of have to consider that in the motion, that the town would agree to that or something like that.
Okay.
I'm assuming that they want something on the bandstand.
Oh, yeah.
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 That's appropriate.
That's just a-
Similar
that's
to
just a
what we
go-to
put on
thing.
the Heritage House.
I was gonna say something similar to that, just
Yeah.
what goes on
Oh,
there.
we're doing a bunch of work on the bandstand, I'm sure we can.
Yeah.
So,
Should we do that as an amendment to the initial motion, or?
well, maybe a
I
separate,
mean,
maybe a separate motion
I wouldn't-
to refer that item to the bandstand project. Like we would consolidate that item with the overall appropriation for the
That might be good,
bandstand.
because there are options, and we can then talk to
Funding.
the swing band about what they think is appropriate, and, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Mayor, second motion that an appropriate memorial plaque be budgeted for within the and be I guess a request to find out the how do I want to say that? I think that's right. Appropriate memorial be budgeted for within the bandstand restoration project, which falls within the centennial program, be evaluated by staff.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Joe, I'll look at it when Mo
Yeah,
takes
you
up the
can
draft minutes and
clean it up,
make it make
clean up
sense
the
if
wordsmithing.
it's-
Do we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded by the deputy mayor. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Just before we move off the
Yep.
subject, I'm going to confront you with one more question. Tomorrow, we're putting up a couple of project signs for the mural and bandstand to help people know what's going on, in particular with the approaching Scarecrow Festival. They're very basic signs, but they do associate these projects with the town and with the town centennial. So we have two options with regards to the bandstand, because I knew this was coming, so I asked for two different designs. One just says Town Bandstand Project, whereas the other one says Michael O'Connor Memorial Bandstand Project. Which one would you prefer to have go up tomorrow?
Well, we passed the motion, so put up.
Now officially,
Yeah.
the Michael O'Connor
Let's go with it.
Memorial Bandstand.
Mayor, if you would, if we went with the latter, as long as we formally reached out to Kathleen and just let her know. I'm not sure how well telegraphed this decision is outside of you and conversation with Bob.
No, they met and Kathleen spoke to this. She was very much a part of it, not initially,
Okay,
but then they involved her when they had sort of tested.
Oh, great.
the waters
Okay.
with David Friendly and the various other people that had been there. She selected the wording.
excellent.
Councillor Bain, CAO and I are both going to be in Halifax tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a few moments maybe to stop by and just confirm to Kathleen that it's been approved at council?
Or to
I
well-
guess if I could find her at home,
That's
I'm selling books tomorrow for the next
Oh,
3
you're on the
Yeah.
phone.
Well,
Well,
could,
I mean, if we have I'll
Yeah.
jump in there.
You
I-
can.
I think
My
that
son is playing trumpet right next to her
There you
right
go.
now, so
Okay.
he's here.
If you
I would
If
say
you could just make sure that goes through before Derek puts the sign up,
Yep.
and then the sign
Yeah,
goes up.
yeah, and, early
Yeah.
in the morning.
Also maybe
And also,
Bob-
you have to communicate this guy Sale which one of these
Yeah, well,
two
I can-
designs we're using.
I
should
cer-
also notify Bob Weld, who's the redder.
I can certainly
This
reach
letter.
out too. I'll reach out to Tim and
you
Michael
can
Jr.
notify
too.
him, I can give him a call, doesn't really matter.
Okay.
A letter probably would be appropriate.
Yeah, so we'll certainly follow up with the letter, but it is a good point that if the sign goes up before they get the letter, we should try to call them.
Well, I'll give him a call. And tell him he'll be getting it.
Okay. 4-7, Mayor Rachel Bailey, Town of Lunenburg. Letter of support for the request to transportation infrastructure renewal at the province to schedule some road repairs to Highway 3 between Mahone Bay and Martinsbrook.
So move.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded by Councillor O'Neill, all in favor?
Yes.
That was easy. And the
Can we
motion
do
would
it for
be,
going to Martin's River as well?
we're
The
gonna.
road I drive on every day.
No, Martin's Brook.
I know, I'm like, going the other way.
Right.
Well, you have to put in a
The one to
request.
Martin's Brook's a lot worse than the one to Martin's River.
It's got nothing to do with
So,
us, sure.
Staff will prepare a letter and we'll Alright, we're down. Correspondence information items.
To receive and file, your worship.
Okay, seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Carver. All in favor to move, okay. Just, I would note that the NSFM, there's gonna be a resolutions discussion and planning for the fall conference on Monday in Truro. There's other ones, but there's none on the South Shore. Councillor Carver and I are going to the one on Monday afternoon from 3 to 5. So if anybody wants to go, I know you're just chomping at the bit to do that. We're planning to leave Mahone Bay around 12:45.
Do you
And we'll
ha-
be returning at 5 o'clock right after it's over, and NSFM is usually quite punctual.
Is there a very clear outcome expected for that meeting? Is it a working session?
They're gonna present the list of resolutions, and there'll be some background information, and then the ones that group feels should go forward will be identified, and then they'll combine that with the 3 other sessions.
To get our greatest hits.
Different.
If I'm not able to attend that session, may I give my feedback to any background material that they'll be working with and have you bring that
You
into
could
the
certainly
meeting?
respond to an email that NSFM sent out.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yes.
You could do that. You could respond directly.
Yes, and I just wondered if I gave that response to you, if you were planning on speaking to any of the points, that I could ask you to incorporate those into.
You can certainly try that.
Okay.
Anyway, we're going up on
Monday.
Monday and there's an empty seat in the
It sort
car.
of feels like duty somehow because it's dry and it's confusing, the process.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It's,
it's
uh,
intentionally confusing, and they only want to talk at you while you're there, so.
Are
But,
you
I mean,
go-
it's appreciated that you guys are willing to go, because
Yeah.
having sat through so many of these,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you sort of feel maybe you can influence something. Never
yeah, I
sure.
can't make it on Monday, otherwise I would go,
They're
but.
usually pretty much cut and dry.
They used to have a situation where you would go to the fall workshop and stand in the Westin Hotel and there'd be resolution
Yeah,
after
yeah, yeah,
resolution
Yeah,
proposed by whoever.
Painful.
And you'd vote them down or they would go forward, and then they came up with this other plan that,
Yeah, mostly they would pass, and then the NSFM wouldn't follow them up because they didn't have the capacity to do so.
Yeah.
So now they can only accept 5, and 5 are almost always chosen by the executive committee.
Okay, so you're.
Thank you.
yeah, it's good to go. All right, let's move on to the,
Good moment as well to promote the fall convention, as I've only heard from Colleen so far, but an interest in attending, so.
Fall.
We were just saying it wasn't that efficacious, but I think that the convention itself is a little better.
at the
yeah.
Westin Hotel.
At the Westin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've signed up. for
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've only
Did
heard
you
from
sign
Colleen.
Through staff or on your own,
that.
Councillor
Who's
Bain? Okay.
and I'm on hold still.
You're
because
good?
I-
Oh, okay.
I'm signed up.
Nobody tells you anything.
No.
It's
You're
November,
on the
November
boss.
14th?
6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8.
I'll just say 5, 6, 7,
If
8.
you go to the whole.
Might as well.
So I've been hedging, so I have a room booked via staff, and I was hedging, been deciding about whether to go, but I'm just hereby saying I will go.
Good.
Message received?
I'm going, but I haven't decided if I want a room booked. It's close.
Well, it's just, I find that if you're not staying there, because they're starting at 8 a.m., I think, every day but one, that's the day they start at 7:30.
Yeah.
And they go until 6 and 7 o'clock at night, in most cases.
I didn't find this agenda particularly riveting, but, you know,
I always enjoy substituting out the banquet and substituting in Dalhousie's University Sustainability Lecture Series, which happens at the same time. So if you're
The
interested,
only problem is, you have to pay for the meal anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's
that's
in your
$75.
registration.
65.
You can't get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't,
the AMA does the same.
you know, because if my wife goes with me, then I buy her a ticket for the meal, for $130, you can go uptown and have a pretty decent meal.
A lot better than you get at the
Then-
Westin.
Well, at least
Get it dried
four
up.
You got
cocktails.
that, Kevin?
Got it.
Good, good. No,
Beef,
stop.
chicken, or pork, what's it gonna be? Okay. All right. Did you want to mention the PCAP funding application, Mr. CAO, on that last one?
Well, obviously it's good news. We got that.
4,000.
We've been working on the affluent side of it already, and we will have a report probably on your next agenda on how we hope to implement this money that we just got. So, Megan and Derek and I have been working on it.
Then let's go to our staff report to council for September 26th.
As usual, we'll take questions. It's up to 19 pages now.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, it's
growing
something
everybody.
else.
I have a question, and it's around the staff assignments. Yeah, so that's the first section.
Yeah.
About the relationship between number 13 and number 22. Number 13, staff to apply to the Connect 2 program, transportation plan, and 22 is.
Oh yes, well, and they are very much overlapping,
Mhm.
but they came about through different channels. So the active transportation one came through the town's strategic plan, and the staff recommendation, and then this one came through the police advisory board.
Which came from citizens'
Yeah.
request.
Yeah, so I think that the transportation plan will accommodate this request, but I think it is probably important that we track them separately because they did come about in separate ways.
Mhm.
And Mr. Mayor, I know you made this. This was something you were quite passionate about, so I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
Well, my only question is that if we're going to use pedestrian and cycle counters in the development of recommendations to council, and it's
Yeah.
now the 26th of September, who are you going to count in November, December, January, and
I
February?
think what we're going to have to end up doing is
Extrapolate the
making
numbers?
recommendations, and then, making recommendations on the basis of what we know, and then saying we'll follow it up by doing counts to confirm as we go forward. But,
Okay.
yeah, the timing's quite poor for that, and I'd really hoped, as you know, we saw the Daltrack folks presenting at the transit session there in Bridgewater a couple of weeks back, and they had indicated at that time that I could probably get a hold of these counters that week, and I thought, well, at least we'll get them out for Scarecrow Festival and have the maximum amount of traffic.
Ah,
But,
that's the other
we
side
have
of
not
the
gotten
coin.
them yet,
That's
so,
right.
No, it's definitely not going to be confusing in the winter.
Okay.
I guess I feel it's important for the item number 22 because it did come as a particular request from citizens, and it was a repeated request for information and feedback about what's happening, that we stay on top of that.
That's right.
Well, I think with the communications contract, if we get the transportation plan funding, because at this point my understanding is that the extent of the development of transportation plan is contingent on that funding, then if we do get that funding, we'll have some public education and engagement right away to make sure that the community knows that the reason that we're pursuing this is in part to address those concerns. But as far as I know right now, make sure everybody feels the same. I'm not proceeding with the development of the transportation plan until we find out if we have funding. We can downsize some things and still address number 22. So that's the current status.
There are just two items on the service statistics. The looks to me that the code red is fabulously successful so far with almost 170 residents already signing up. I mean, we must, on a percentage basis, this is really impressive in 6 or 8 weeks.
You can see the real jump between those particular dates, and it's no coincidence. We
I
had
think-
some help.
Yeah, so nothing like a big storm, but that's a big number, isn't it? That's a big number. The other item is the traffic signage, speed signage, and how much people like to see that move around town. But interesting, this is the first time I think on Edgewater and Main Street. Am I reading that correctly? That the average speed on those roads was 57 kilometers an hour?
Yeah.
On pretty good volume, I'd say, in that time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
So on average, through that bulk of time, the average speed was 15% above the speed limit.
Your worship, if I can speak to that. that's a particular sign where we notice. So the average is 57, which is higher than we'd like. But what it actually works out as when you go through them is that there are a lot of cars that are going really slowly. And as Dylan pointed out, cars in there too that would stop to let people cross the road. What we were seeing there is a lot of really slow speeds, but actually some very high ones. So we've been working with the RCMP because we've identified concerns about the really high speeds. And next month we have our police advisory board meeting, and we will hear from Sergeant Ferguson. He has referred this over to traffic services and said this is something that's been identified. And in fact, that afternoon after he referred it, there was within a couple hours, there was someone down there. But in addition to that, he has made it a priority for the different watches. So each watch has to report back and say this is what they were able to do on their watch about enforcement of this particular identified area. So those stats are still coming in, so we will see that, and he's going to tease that out of his report that comes in October.
And they were quite active in this June to July period at Edgewater. Anyway.
I saw the cruiser today, one on Main Street, right in front of the teaser, with the lights on. They had pulled somebody over. I assumed it was a crosswalk violation. But then this afternoon at 3 o'clock, they were sitting in front of the Saltbox Brewery, the second car back from the crosswalk, kind of tucked in, with just enough of the cars sticking out that they could see who was speeding or who wasn't stopping at the crosswalk for the speed.
That one over in front of the teaser could have been a fender bender. There was a fender bender in front of the Irving this afternoon. So
Oh, this
It
was
could've
this morning. But they're out there. They're
no, that was this morning too because
yeah.
that there's a hall
Maybe it
this
was.
morning. It was around 9:30. One of our members came back and said that there was a fender bender in front of the Irving 9:30,
Okay.
10 o'clock.
I just wanted to pick up on something that you just said, and I wanted to thank you very much for mentioning that particular car in that particular location. My son is 10 and started at the Bayview School this year, and one of the parents approached me at the opening day for parents, and explained to me that she was concerned that she was expecting to see police officers waiting to catch speeders in that particular area. I subsequently talked to Maureen about it, who assured me that there was a pretty sophisticated system of unmarked cars in that area. And so what you've just said really validates what Maureen told me earlier, in that there are intentions and follow-up to those intentions to have police cars in catching speeders along the school route. So thank you.
And people not doing crosswalks.
Right.
I saw a woman today almost get hit on Main Street. She stepped off the curb and the car didn't stop. Just gone through.
Way
Anyway.
to go. You have to paint streets all white.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways,
And there
let's
are
go.
places
This
on
section
Main
is
Street
excellent,
where
yeah.
when the sun is at a certain angle, you're absolutely
people.
blind as a driver.
Yeah.
It's
Someone accosted me the other day to tell me that.
no,
What's the town gonna do with
I've
that?
had the experience
Yeah, I
in both
know.
directions.
You get beat up every time.
Well, her point was that she couldn't see the child who was waiting to cross the street because of the shade and the sun and the sunglasses and all that. Some might say, well, it's the driver's responsibility to know
Yeah,
that.
it is.
However, when you're dealing with an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old, that logic doesn't wash. Councillor Bain, do you have a
Very
comment?
briefly, and I think I've said this before, I'm just wondering, and the schools, do they drill it into the kids' heads to stop, look and listen? I mean, that was pounded into us from day one right until, as long as I can remember.
Pedestrians have
It just wasn't
responsibility
like
too.
crosswalks can
Do
be
you
a
know
problem.
if I know that
Because
you're
people
very
take
involved
for
in
granted
School,
that you
do
can march
they
across
promote
without paying any
rigorously the traffic safety that the pedestrians should be adopting?
That is certainly one of the things they discuss. We talked to them, we first put in the flags over the crosswalk flags. There was some discussion about, these flags are around and sort of advise their school safety resource officer. I'm not sure what their cycle is and how often they do it and that sort of thing. I don't know. But I know there was, my
Those
son was
flags
not
are
in this
never
district when he was
used.
that age.
Nobody uses
I saw, I'm sorry, Councillor Carr, I saw 3 girls about 8 or 9 years old, And the first one gave the second one a
Yeah.
flag, and gave the third one a flag, and she had her flag, and
They do.
they trooped across the street. Did you have a comment?
Well, just one question about the finance officers.
Yeah.
Report, and then item number 4 is referring to the tax sale. So my question about the tax sale is a municipality permitted to bid on a property that is up for tax sale?
Yeah, and in fact, we would always have a check-in in closed session, the meeting prior to the tax sale. We kind of wait because a lot of the time things drop off the tax sale list as you get close, right? Because they can still redeem them. So there would typically be a discussion of will we bid the minimum or
I
anything
see, okay.
additional. So yeah, that my expectation
Okay.
is on our
I didn't know
October
that, thank
meeting.
you.
If a property is redeemable, that establishes a period of time even after the bid has been accepted,
6 months.
6
that the
months.
person can
Pay it, and that's it.
pay their taxes and then it doesn't get sold.
So essentially, if you do buy a property, you just have to keep it in holding for 6 months.
Okay,
If there's actual damage being done, you can work on it. But
okay. All right. Any other questions for the 19-page report? We're going to have to soon
Comprehensive.
schedule a special council meeting
For that
just to
one.
talk about the report.
well, the best thing about it is hopefully we don't have to talk about it for you guys to get a lot of the value, and
Yeah.
members of the public to get a lot of the values.
Mm. Okay.
I like the survey information too.
Yeah, well, it's I think a great addition. Mo put all that in there. It was able to really see the results. We were a little concerned that it would be hard to express them in this format, but I think it made sense. All right.
60% of the people surveyed get their information from Facebook.
Of course, the survey was being.
Surveys being done.
Yeah.
On Facebook, yeah.
I mean, just not to validate it, but obviously it's going to have a bit of
Yeah,
noise.
But it does tell you something about where people are seeing the survey.
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And the online survey method, 88%. Hmm.
I found it interesting that there was so little interest in the information posted in the post office in terms of those
Well, and
responses.
at least for these people, the option of attending a public meeting was not of interest.
Oh.
Right? Not even 2%.
Yeah, it's a very specific cohort. That's
Yeah,
what we
it's
want.
a specific group of
And that's-
we
and
got
that's
60
us.
people who were on Facebook anyway.
I
But,
wonder what the correlation would be of the age of the person completing it. You know, someone who has a family, they're home with children, or they actually work in the daytime. and
that's one thing our
night is
survey
downtime.
instrument can't do.
Yeah.
We didn't buy we didn't opt for the option to get demographics and cross reference because
Okay.
we just wanted to keep them short.
Hmm.
No fingerprint scan.
Okay.
It's very interesting to do the cross referencing on a survey with demographics. I've certainly done some, but it's a lot of work.
That's like the reporter on CBC that's talking about one particular political party, and you often wonder if they're a card-carrying member of that party in the first place. I don't know. Okay. Anything else for the CAO? No? All right. Let's move on. 6.2, staff report to council, amendments to the solid waste bylaw.
So Maureen has presented some additional consideration to follow up on Sue's presentation. We thought it was a good idea to at least break out some of the recommendations and talk about, how they've arisen and what that actually means for the service. So the recommendation that Mo has presented here is to give first reading. The bylaw that is being presented for first reading, at least in this case by staff, is slightly amended from the bylaw that was presented by Sue. And it's been amended, I believe, and Mo, you can add, but I believe entirely in reference to the coordination of waste collection piece,
Yes.
which is to say that in places where our current bylaw says the town of Mahone Bay will oversee and coordinate, and Sue had proposed that that be amended to MJSB will oversee and coordinate, we have re-amended it, I guess, reverted it to the town of Mahone Bay. And if you have questions about, I think the rationale for why we did that is here, but Maureen, I'm sure would be happy to speak briefly to that, as she has a lot of history with it. And if everybody's clear, then we've got the first reading.
I would have to have
Have we
first reading.
discussed with the people at NJSB what our proposed adjustments are going to be?
Immediately after hitting send on the agenda, because of course IT gets this as well, I started receiving phone calls. The only comments I heard from them were the issue about wood and metal in the landfill. That's the only comment at all I've heard from them. So,
Okay. So there's,
they've read it thoroughly.
all right,
And although we made comment, we didn't actually change something. And I mean, if council would like to talk about whether we can push for something, I think that would be something we'd need to involve the rest of the municipal units in that
I was gonna say,
conversation.
what did Bridgewater and the MODL do with their,
Well, Sue hasn't presented to their councils yet, but because it's a new service for them, she's presenting it as a fait accompli that this is how it will work. Because they've never had it any other way. We had it a different way, and it was a favorable way for residents. But so we'd have to get them to the other two units to also agree that they wanted to see Sue deal with the sorting of the metal and wood post collection on bulky items, for her to come back with a report to like actually try to do that. So if we wanted to do that, then I'd say it goes to MJSB board, and could still happen while we give first reading, or we could hold off first reading while we try to take it to the board. So that's my suggestion.
you know, the board is not meeting next week, they canceled
It was to,
that. Or yesterday.
last night.
Yeah,
Last night.
Last night
Yeah.
canceled that.
Well, Your Worship, I'd like to recommend that council give first reading of the amended Town of Mahone Bay Solid Waste Management Bylaw, number 46.
You a seconder?
I'll stick on that.
Question?
Yes?
Would this be the moment, if, do I understand correctly, I realize that I have already mentioned this in earlier meetings, so I apologize for the repetition. Would this be the moment to discuss whether it would be possible to include in the agreement an additional curbside pickup day similar to the one that is in MODL? And we have, you know, where you have large bulky items twice a year, it used to be fall and spring, and now I believe it's one curbside exchange, it's being called in this agreement.
You mean a second curbside exchange using the new terminology?
Oh. I think you're referring to that we have a day set aside where we put stuff out that people could come and help themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm very concerned as someone who really does not like things to go, like usable things to go into landfill. This would not, I suppose, preclude Mahone Bay from taking on a completely separate initiative where we encourage residents to, on a particular day, do this activity. So I'm very happy to support this motion, but I wondered if this would be the time to discuss putting it into the agreement, or if we as a council want to keep this aside as a separate discussion for a later day.
Well, just in terms of the bylaw, it doesn't actually need to be governed by the bylaw in the sense that no collection is actually occurring on that day. So Sue had offered to try to organize it in her presentation, right? She said next year she wanted to do that, but her doing that wouldn't actually have anything to do with collection. As you say, we could organize it, she could organize it, anybody could organize it. If it has to go back in at the end of the exchange to somebody's house, then it's not part of our solid waste bylaw because
Right.
nothing's being picked up.
And that would be a specific exchange, but if we would go back to what we had before in Mahone Bay, before this agreement, where we had twice a year, people cleaning their basements and their attic and downsizing and putting real garbage, plus a couple of items that hopefully, you know, that they're happy to have going to a landfill, but somebody may come by to pick up. That's what we had before, and this takes that out of, we have changed that before this. But I was just wondering when would be the moment, or has it already passed, to have the discussion about whether Mahone Bay wants to go back to having 2 of those big garbage pickup days.
Well, I guess this would be the moment, but in the sense that it's already passed, we
yeah.
piloted something that now is becoming county-wide, so it's,
Deputy
I just have a comment. On that week when the heavy guy, look, when I throw something out, it's not worth anything to anybody. Unless it's a piece of metal or something like that. I don't throw it in the
you
fridge,
can't
it's
put
still
that out
working.
on the bulky item.
No, I know, but or Chesterfield wouldn't be fit to sit in. But if you go around on a Wednesday when that hard stuff is out, they're still picking it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it goes on, so I don't know why we need 2 extra days.
Well,
My own personal opinion.
two things. I think, like the financial analysis was very, very compelling. That both Mahone Bay, which has the smallest volume, and we're just really a rounding error in the grand scheme of life. But I think we're.
Welcome to Randing Error, Nova
I know
Scotia.
3.39% of the garbage is from Mahone Bay, so it does have a lot of ramifications when we change our minds. But I think the citizens under the new program actually get 12 days a year, right, to put out bulky garbage versus before they only had 2. It's not an event. It's not, you can bring down your bulky items anytime you want, right? On any second Wednesday. No?
It's 26 times.
26, yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Fair enough.
52
Okay.
weeks.
I thought you could only do it on garbage day. You can do it on
Landfill
recycling
says
day.
every second week. Yeah.
Every second collection. Fair enough. I guess 26 days a year. So
But notwithstanding the bylaw, if I understand the CAO right, Mahone Bay could have a share it with your neighbor day
good,
on a Monday,
good.
because on Wednesday, whatever the neighbor hasn't taken,
Okay.
Well, I
goes out of the garbage.
I think the cumulative benefit for the whole region to move away from the 2 days, it's big money. I think it was $600,000 or $700,000 of overall value. That's it's so expensive for those operators to have that one day. Just the magnitude of the amount of money and the manpower and the resources. So I think we have a better quality product for less money by making this sacrifice. And it is a sacrifice. The sacrifice is we don't get the 2 fall days. But what we do get instead of the fall days is we have a cheaper service overall, and we get to put out our garbage 26 days a year. So
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And one of the compelling arguments for doing it, how we're doing it currently, is because sometimes they would have to go out and rent trucks. And if they had a breakdown or something,
Yeah.
it was really creating a backlog.
And
I think, Mo, you dealt with this and had many discussions, and it was.
That was one of the
agreed
most.
that This was a very positive way of doing it. 26 pickups.
That was one of the most compelling factors was the costs and the vulnerability, because they bring in all these trucks, they bring in all the extra staff. The staff are working harder, the trucks are working harder. Staff break down, trucks break down. You have to bring in another extra truck. It's not a sustainable. Makes me nervous.
And it was also suggested that when we were waiting for those days to happen, things would end up going into the woods because people didn't want to hold on to them in their sheds for 3 months or 4 months, whatever it was going to be till the next pickup day.
You still have
In
something
general, I
on
think
the
the
floor, do
residents
we?
really like this.
Pardon me?
You still have a motion on the floor?
Yes.
We do. Yes,
For
we
first
do.
reading.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion's carried. And you can always put your stuff on Kijiji for free. Geez, look, people come and take stuff. I can't believe what they'll come and get.
But I love the event. I love the kind of event that happens in some of these communities when they have a day. So,
Well, we're gonna have-
yeah, we are.
And
Bandstand project.
Yeah.
We're done with that one. You've got your motion.
yeah, that's done.
Yeah,
Motion's carried.
okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Good. I will do it.
So the bandstand project, we've taken a long time to get through phase 1, but it's finally to that point. So have some good news about external funding and looking for approval to move forward. I hope people are not surprised by anything in here because I have preceded this in the Centennial reports, but I haven't done a special breakout report just about the bandstand. So tried to provide the linkages to, I did talk about accessibility in these other reports. So any questions or anything? Or?
What's the estimated time of completion?
So for phase 2, including the roof and the accessibility improvements, we should be able to get it done this fall. I mean, weather permitting with the roof, but if we move quickly, I think we should be able to get it done this fall. Phase 3, which would be improvements to the actual experience of performers and visitors. What is the word for that? Audience. That part would be applying for funding. Like we come back to council with a report. If council supports it, go out for funding, and then try to do that at the beginning of next season. So that phase 3 wouldn't be part of the Centennial because we'll just run out of time.
So that would be the first quarter of 2021.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
we hopefully know about funding by then, and we could have it in the budget if
Alright.
council wants to. At this point, I'm not really proposing a phase 3, but I just wanted to put it out there.
And the phase 3 was for the benches and some of the other.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of
Exterior.
conversations with the performers there about things like lighting into the evenings,
Audio
the
equipment.
possibility of some kind of limited audio system, coverage so that when they have weather that is coming from the ocean side, if they could pull some down on that side to protect them, and then shade for people on the bleachers because it's actually kind of beating sun there. So we're looking at some options that could provide shade.
And lighting on the bandstand itself.
Yeah.
Up inside, because when you get the bright sunny day,
Yeah.
the shadows that end up getting cast, and they're trying to see or photograph the people that are on the bandstand playing, it doesn't work out.
So all of that stuff would be eligible for Canada Cultural Spaces funding, and I did get a grant from that in Shelburne for a very similar project, so I do think
Could
that
come
they
together.
would be willing.
So
I would be pleased to move that we approve phase 2 of the Centennial Bandstand project to proceed as presented with the town's share of total project costs estimated at $37,237.
Okay, so we have a seconder? Seconded by the deputy mayor?
just one question, Mayor, on that. So at a high level, when we started the conversation around the bandstand project, let's say 18 months ago, it went through hook, jigs, and the reels, but we thought we were going to be in for about 60, and we were going to get outside funding for 30. And where we're ending up is 63 and 37. So that's really what we're
63 and external of 27, our share being 37. So
our share being 37. So I'm just saying
we didn't get all the
from-
hope for, but we
right. But from the original idea to where we ended up from a funding perspective, we're +7.
Yeah.
That's where we ended up.
That's
Okay.
That's normal.
Yeah, fair. No,
The
I'm,
cost of the
Fair
project is 63, and the town's contribution is down to
It's up to 37.
up to 37.
37, yeah.
So basically, we went for one other
Yeah.
external funding. That was the beautification phase 2, and we didn't get that one. So yeah,
Okay.
that would have been the roof. Basically, the roof didn't
Okay.
get funding, but it's.
All in
I
favor?
think it's worth doing.
Yeah.
Motion's carried. Strike up the band. Okay. Let's go to.
And that makes that project sign all the more important because the project actually will be going on for another
Yeah.
6 weeks.
might be $1,000
Code
more.
red draft policy.
Okay, so this was just carried forward for the actual motion from our last meeting because it's a policy.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend, Your Worship, that council adopt mass notification system policy as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion's carried. Clearland Road Project. Are you ready to dance again?
So yeah, this one comes from normally we would wait until the fall for chip sealing and Derek put out a tender. We came back and we realized that we were a fair bit below budget, and I think this does exemplify the need to do more revisiting of our long-term capital items before they get to budget. So I am going to come with a report probably to our next meeting about getting together for a workshop in the course of the fall to sort of pre-discuss some of the capital items so that Derek can know where we actually think something's coming forward. Can he get a little bit of better estimation? But anyway, long story short, we underestimated the cost of this project. If we're to proceed as originally planned, there is an increase from 50 to 72,000, and it's out of gas tax, so it would still be out of gas tax.
That's a very significant underestimation. The numbers, I mean, it's really outside of what I would normally consider to be an acceptable shortage, and I wondered what our options were.
And it really wouldn't, we couldn't have underestimated this project if we had gone out and adequately tested coming into the budget. So Derek's feeling was that it kind of slipped by as an estimation that has been on our books for at least 3 or 4 years, and so it hasn't been revised as chip steel costs have climbed a fair bit in that 3 or 4 years. And I mean, he is apologizing for that. I am apologizing for that. But we know that now we need to pay more attention to those things that have been on our list for a long time before they go into that budget.
Petroleum costs are up too. So.
Well, that's it. The costs have climbed. We should have gone back to the companies and.
Your Worship, when you had that little photo up with our MLA, and
Yeah.
I still call it the Woodstock Road.
Yeah.
But you guys call it the Clayland Road, right?
That's
The
what
one
the
for-
signs say.
That's the one up.
I
from
think
the old
Derek might call
cemetery.
it the Woodstock Road
Yeah.
we were talking about.
Wasn't she gonna give us some money for that?
Gas tax.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not Suzanne anyway.
So-
It was
Okay.
doubled up gas tax.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is
oh,
double
yeah, I
gas
know, we
tax,
got
but-
double the amount of 80,000, yeah, that's great.
So, Mayor, I'm prepared to move this along, but
Yeah.
I think if the CAO could take away, maybe come back to either future council meeting, just give the council a bit of a roadmap on where we are, like from this year's capital program.
That's exactly what I'm talking about
Yeah.
doing this month.
So I
Yeah,
think
so
we're
I'll come to the
we're
report.
plus 22 here, we're plus 7 on the bandstand, we're plus 32 on communications. This is just capital. We're plus 30.
When you say
On-
we're plus, we're the
We're
cost.
these
over
are
us.
these are all decisions that this council's made in the last couple months that
Yeah.
are none of it's budgeted.
Yeah.
We approved last month. We approved the chargers, the car chargers.
That's
I mean,
next year's budget.
No,
But
fair
yeah,
enough.
that's a fair
I mean,
point.
but the good news is that like we did make some decisions with regard to infrastructure funds and the de-transfer tax might allow us to. But these aren't the original objective was to get money in the funds so we didn't have to pay for the entire fire hall with that. So I mean, slowly but surely, I think if we knew kind of had a bit of a place setting, put everybody's mind at ease that we really have a program that's sustainable because we can't just keep dipping into the reserve.
Well,
for-
and maybe it's a question that we all need to have in the back of our mind in March when we're doing our operations budget for 2021 to ask the question of CAO and the works manager how fresh the estimates are. Where did they get the? I'm not suggesting that they will not have done that because I know they will, but it's a question we need to ask ourselves before we approve that operational budget.
Like I have every faith and confidence in the staff that they give us the best information that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's illuminating for me personally is this year is the gap in time between the time we as a town have to put in our funding applications until we get a timely response to those funding applications.
So you can
And
scratch that word out altogether,
and-
the timely word.
Right. So, it does seem that the disconnect between these timing is really jamming us up now. I mean,
Yeah.
so we're doing the best we can with some expectation and a lot of feedback from the bureaucracy and our MLA and our MP, but yet we wait. And so the beyond the $22,000 here, which I think we'll all live to fight fight another day. The concern is that we have millions and millions of dollars of funding requests out with no visibility on whether the money's going to come in, and those items, and if they don't come in the right sequence, it's going to really we don't get the right money at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
This is all small potatoes compared to the real impact on next year's budget, because next year's budget won't even be real, because if we find out we have to fund one project and it's not our number one priority, if we end up funding our 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th priority,
That's the money we
because
got.
that's the only money we receive, we never get funded, never get project 1, 2, or 3. Like that's a tough day for us.
Well,
Anyway,
when you meet up with Bernadette, you have a little conversation.
Fair
You give her-
enough.
You give her the same
Fair-
spiel.
Yeah, you've been doing
And
that
we're
for
gonna- And we're gonna
40
have a
years.
provincial election, you could do the same
know.
with
I
our
know.
MLA.
At the same
That's
time,
your go-to.
I'm sure you as well have citizens saying, well, what's happening with this? What's happening with
Yeah.
that? And how long do you continue to say, well, we've applied for funding with the provincial
Yeah.
government, the federal government, it's coming. And after a while, they begin to think,
Yeah,
That's why I
how
think
much
it's-
trouble do we need?
so I think we did
These
a good
points
job.
are very well said,
Anyway,
and this
yeah,
is
yeah.
exactly what Derek and I have been talking about,
Yeah.
bringing a report
Yeah.
to you guys on,
Yeah.
because there are a whole bunch of things that haven't worked out,
You never
we've been
know.
waiting on funding doesn't come, residents
Yeah.
want to know what's the contingency, and we have some sort of contingency type suggestions.
Yeah.
So I think we need a long time to sit there, like it's going to be a special session, because we need to sit down and go.
Well, your worship,
So
like
I
to
don't-
move.
Councilor O'Neill
sorry.
had her hand
It's
up.
okay. So I just don't know the priority associated with this particular stretch of road. I assume that staff is recommending that we go ahead with the project, adding additional funding to it. Has there been an argument made for deferring the project?
I think the discussion around deferring this project is essentially that within another year or two, couple of years, this road would no longer be suitable for chip seal. And so at that point, it would need to actually have a resurfacing done.
It's risky to delay
So
this
it
project.
should have been done when it was $50,000, because it would have been $50,000 then because the road was better. But it wasn't, and so here we are. So that's why the recommendation is to go forward. But I think all of this talks about an asset management plan as a long-term objective, which council has certainly put out there in your strategic plan, is your way of reconciling these things. It's a bunch of shifting pieces, so you actually pre-discuss if this goes this way, then that. You know, it gives us the opportunity to look at this. We don't have a plan for our roads that comprehensively goes through and says this is the road to do, because we haven't taken the time to crunch all those numbers and develop that plan. So this is a legacy recommendation in that it's been on the list for some time, and it does need to be done if we don't want to resurface that street. And I will say resurfacing would be at least $300,000.
I would like to
Councilor
make
Carver.
your work though.
Councillor Carver.
Oh, it's not, it's
Sorry,
the road,
Jeff.
fellas,
It's
it's the
exactly
road.
the question that Councillor O'Neill asked, the question about deferring it. So, but what you're saying is that deferring it for even a year has the risk.
I mean, you know, if we could do some preliminary patching, like we're not going to be unable to come back to the road in a year's time, but I think that's the discussion that has sort of led to it being an outstanding item for a number of years. And although we do need to get a much better handle on our long-term capital planning and develop an asset management plan, we also can't defer everything in the meantime. Like some things will need to be done. So we have a very minimal amount of road maintenance work compared to the actual depreciation on our roads every year. If you just look at the value of the roads and how much we should be spending, we're not doing nearly enough. We usually do it when we're doing water wastewater.
Yeah, of course.
Rather than
So you
specific.
could have it once.
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
I would like to move that council increase the approved budget for the Quail Land Road double chip seal project, $72,000, and direct the staff to proceed with the project.
Seconded by Councillor Bain. All in favor? Motion's carried.
That was the stitch in time.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Next we have Councillor Carver on the
Suggest all the
Lunenburg
things
County
I could be
Senior
doing.
Safety Project
Yes,
Conference.
Yes, so this information was sent to all councils, and I realized that I thought I'd only sent the short form of this, but you got the whole report. The report was sent to the Department of Seniors, where it's received a very positive reception, and we are in conversation with the Department of Seniors about meeting with the Deputy Minister to talk more about some of the recommendations and with some specific focus on some of the issues that come up. And I'll just give you an example of one of them. At age 60, we're talking about where people fall in the cracks. So one of the issues is at age 65, individuals who are discharged from the Department of Community Services Income Support Program often end up with a decreased income, as well as loss of their support caseworker and other benefits such as assistance with additional medical costs, travel, income for special diets, and assistance with direct bill payment. Those are all things that they would have received, that additional support while they were on the community services income support. At age 65, they end up on old age security and guaranteed income and no person attached to them to help, and with no recourse in terms of special diets or transportation, the kinds of things that they were used to receiving. So that's where some of the referrals are coming to senior safety. So as one of our board members calls the senior safety coordinator, says, well, they're crack fillers because these are people who are falling through the cracks. So, and I'm constantly dumbfounded by the disconnect between what we see on the ground and what we perceive on the ground things are happening, and what the people up there, the policymakers, have no idea. I mean, they're going on, and they're talking and but they have no idea about the direct impact And we've had a couple of people actually, if we show them pictures of a hoarding situation, their jaws drop. So that's part of what we're trying to do, is to reduce that disconnect somehow, because the Department of Seniors and the next vision of Shift 2.0, because they're in discussions on developing that now. One of their big focuses is on reducing ageism. So ageism meaning disparaging people who are older and assuming that they are frail or not fit, or just making assumptions. But the problem with it is that the people that the senior safety program is seeing are just flying under the radar. I mean, they're afterthoughts. So that's my little rant. Thank you for listening. So I'm feeling hopeful, though, that we might have some mileage in conversation with the deputy if we would actually get there.
Okay.
So I couldn't actually amend what's up in front of us. Do we add anything else under 7 or just 8?
8.
Okay.
8.5 and 8.6. 8.1 Heritage Advisory Committee draft minutes.
Penny, you want to do the honors on that one?
So I chaired that one, and as always, the Heritage Advisory Committee is an exciting place to be. Always fascinating. And we were, the main thing that we talked about were the revisions to some of the documents that are used in the heritage registrations and process. And Kelly was working on that very thoroughly, and then planning for the ceremony to recognize 16 Orchard Street, commonly known as the Biscuit Eater Cafe. And so there is going to be an event on, we're actually going to have it on,
If I may
is it there in the
interject,
minutes?
I believe that there's Kelly's still doing some work to confirm details.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's, in theory, it's going to be late morning, midday on the 26th of October. That's the tentative date.
I know she's working on a tentative date, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that hasn't confirmed. So that's, and then there'll be featuring a talk by Deborah Trask, who, with her limitless knowledge and wisdom about heritage in Mahone Bay.
Okay.
More coming.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Planning Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning Advisory Committee met. There had been a suggestion in advance of the meeting, in absence of the development agreement that we are now expecting to get in later October, that we were going to cancel this meeting, and I decided that we would have this session in order to do a level setting exercise with the committee. The committee has a new chair, myself, as well as a new member, Francis Kangata. This was his first meeting. The idea was to have a review of the public information session materials that were presented at the fire hall, so that everyone on the committee would have the same understanding of the project as presented publicly to date, and to ask any questions. I was lucky enough to stop by the Tim Hortons on the way into the meeting and ran into Mr. Duff from the McLeod Group and asked him very politely if he felt that he would like to represent his own materials during that meeting. And he is very clear that he wishes to be helpful, and did present his materials. Garth from the planning office, Garth Sturvant, was also here, presented his materials. Dylan also spoke to the project. So the idea again was to make sure everyone has the same understanding of the public documentation to date, and to further talk about what next steps are for the project, and to clearly understand, so that the committee itself understands what the mandate is with respect to the development agreement, and what essentially our scope is, should we receive a development agreement of this magnitude. This will be the largest project in Mahone Bay by price. So that was a very, I thought, successful meeting. We did have quite a number of members from the public in the gallery who asked some respectful questions at the end. And thank you for noting these here. But there was no, I should be very clear, there was no new information presented during that meeting, and that was, of course, very much on purpose. And I think that is what I want to
Okay.
say about that. Now, is this where I would ask about the
You
new
can.
member?
You
I think it
can.
just ties in nicely to expedite this question. Following this meeting, I received an email from Chuck Barr to let me know that he is moving, and he's moving out to Cowichan Bay, and has respectfully and necessarily left the committee. And I would like to, because of the impending development agreement that we're expecting, I would like to trigger finding another member for the committee. And that would be my, if I need a motion for that?
Yeah, well, so I think the motion that we used last time, because I know that Penny had brought a similar one, would have been the council direct staff to advertise the vacancy on the planning advisory committee.
Okay, so I move that that staff advertise the vacancy on the planning advisory committee.
Seconded by Councillor Bain.
Aaron, I just have a quick question. Is there also a vacancy on the age-friendly committee as well?
Not anymore,
That not anymore.
not anymore.
Okay.
There was
Okay.
one space.
It was resolved. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, we have a motion to advertise. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you very much. The last follow-up item that I would like to, just as additional information to these minutes, is that also in the meantime, the date of the next planning advisory committee, which had been scheduled for October 1st, is now
22nd.
the 22nd. And you are all welcome and encouraged to be there.
I have a really technical question, if I may.
Sure.
In the minutes, at the point where it describes the agenda and the motion by the deputy mayor that the agenda be approved as amended to include the development of an action plan under new business, yet that is not reflected in the rest of the agenda. In terms of, it was added to the agenda as new business, then it didn't happen apparently. But I'm just pointing that out, that is an inconsistency, a technicality of some sort.
Okay. So it was placed on the agenda, but then didn't happen.
Yeah.
Or there's no record of it
Right,
happening here.
yeah, and as I recall, it didn't happen in the
Deb-
meeting.
Deputy Mayor might have an answer.
No, I don't have an answer. I was gonna go on to another one. It's an
So
item
that's,
up
that's
there.
all, it was a
Yeah.
technicality.
Yeah.
or whatever
So I
it's
mean, I
called.
think we would assume that we'd probably put it on the next agenda on
Yeah.
new business. But
There you go.
it is
I'm just wondering, should we fill this position till after we see the first development agreement?
it won't get filled until then anyway.
But I mean, even that, okay. Well, I don't know how long you're putting on the ad.
I mean, I think we give it at least 3 weeks normally, but also it has to come to PAC first and then the council. Like
Okay.
it.
Well, that'll be after we have a draft then of the,
Good point.
PAC has to nominate the member, right?
right, yeah.
And council needs to ratify it.
Yes.
So it would be well after the 22nd.
Yeah.
On that
Yeah.
point, and thank you
Into
for that, is
November.
there any precedent for expediting this as a means of getting someone on the committee in advance of a
They-
development agreement of this size?
I mean, it's really
We're
all
trying
about
to avoid that.
what you're looking for, because if you put out an ad, like now the next ad would, like we missed the deadline for next week's paper now, so it would be going out on the 7th of October, and then if it were to run to close in time to get into the package for the meeting on the 22nd, it would only be open for 8 days. So I guess that's like we would recommend at least 3 weeks to give the public an opportunity.
Okay.
And that would mean it wouldn't get to, it would get to the November meeting of the committee, which you may still be considering the development agreement, but even then, it would only arrive as a recommendation to then go to council, so the person wouldn't attend a meeting until December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
You've got economic development. Who's got economic? Councillor Bain. That's your.
No, I
Still call
sent
it
my
this.
regrets,
Yes.
and I
Oh, that's
regretted
right,
that I
that's
sent
right.
my regrets.
Oh, it was a very good meeting. I'm curious why you regretted not having been there. I mean,
Because I went to a golf fundraiser.
Oh.
in Harbor.
Oh. So yeah, a very good, engaged discussion by the Economic Development Committee. The results of the action plan, were discussed, and the survey. The bit of work we did during the session was to review a proposal.
Sorry, I
for-
didn't highlight this, Colleen.
that's
This
okay.
is a motion for the,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so we reviewed using a tool that was developed, a proposal for painting a bench. Do you have a question, Deputy Mayor?
No, wait till you're done,
Okay.
then I have a question,
Okay.
yes.
I have a question too.
Okay, lots of questions. So we reviewed a proposal. We ran an exercise where we graded the proposal and determined that we would bring this motion to council to approve the proposal. So that's what I would like to do now, just to get it on the floor to discuss. So I would like to move that that council approve the proposal from Fern Swinner, sorry, my apologies, to decorate the wooden bench adjacent to the comfort station on Edgewater Street to recognize the town's 2019 centennial. I don't know that we have the photo of the proposal in this package. I didn't see it. So,
There's some
Is
artist
it?
renditions in here, yeah.
okay, very good.
No, it's on the next, it's on the next page.
Just wondering, your worship, these are drafts. These have to be approved by the committee next
Yeah.
month.
We're accepting
We
them as
do.
drafts.
Yeah, so should we be approving motions till it gets back to the committee? I'm just thinking of procedure.
This was the procedure I believe that we agreed. So we agreed that the Economic Development Committee would not have carte blanche in giving the stamp of approval on these proposals. So my understanding of the Economic Development Committee's role is to take in the proposals, review them, and make a motion to council.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct in
Yeah,
that.
that's fine.
And if I had highlighted it, it would have been more clear, but essentially, we usually now highlight from that council part of the motion, so that, and
Yeah.
Colleen did it first, but you guys can just jump in and make
I'll
that part.
second the motion then, your
Here
worship.
we go. We have a second. My only point, I think, on the idea of these being draft minutes is that when these minutes go back to the Economic Development Committee, they can say, oh, no, I think such and such should
That's
be.
what I was getting
Oh, I
at.
see.
So if we've already approved that motion,
Yeah.
then it would have to come back. I've often wondered why we act on draft minutes.
So do I.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's my question.
Well, the motion's not a draft. The recommendation that they're making to you, once it's made here by Colleen, the committee could go back and say that they did it differently, but Colleen still made the motion here the way that it was worded here.
okay.
So it wouldn't matter.
As long as we have that understanding,
It would
Yeah, because
take-
waiting for the minutes to be approved would
Could take
everything
some
would take
time.
a few months to get
Yeah.
but I think that's why
Yes.
we get into the idea of
Yeah.
And minutes
acting
are a
on draft
record
minutes.
of what happened at the meeting, but the fact that Colleen took from that the motion that she brought forward is
What
still a
makes sense.
separate
Yeah.
motion
Okay.
to council.
That's
okay.
what it is.
Everybody's happy with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question though, before we vote, just about the bench itself. Is it because it looks like a solid slab, but those benches are,
Yeah, so we have to
Slabs,
get back
okay.
to her and kind of say like, so how would you do this design knowing that there's slabs? And if she
Yeah.
needs to modify it slightly, I think
I
the
see,
committee
okay,
we're
okay.
pretty comfortable with that.
yeah,
so.
okay.
I agree.
I
Okay.
thought it was kind of cute.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
So the
And if
thing-
you haven't been down to CRPS, go down tomorrow and have a look at what Peter Matches is doing.
So before we leave
Unbelievable.
the Economic Development Committee, Mayor, may I speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Two things. One is that in the action plan, the October 22nd date is the same night as the blanket exercise. I just
Yes,
letting you
it
know
is.
that. I'm just letting you know that.
No, that is, we did discuss that. Yeah, it is a direct conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anyone going to the blanket exercise?
Go, yeah.
Well, if you do nothing else,
Yeah.
as a counselor, you should go to that
Yeah.
blanket exercise session.
Yeah.
It is an absolutely powerful, moving session. And it's the concept, not necessarily the person that does it. I went in Quebec City at FCM.
Mm-hmm.
Boy,
It's
it was a tough
transformational.
afternoon.
So this
Yeah.
day was chosen to reflect the week.
Small business.
Small Business Week. So really, we ended up with no other dates that we could hold this. So.
For the PAC?
No,
For the Bob Cervelli
Oh,
talk.
that one, yeah.
I'm not sure
yes,
how the
yeah.
blanket thing got scheduled. It just suddenly
He's
was
on the
scheduled, but
It's a
we
Mahone,
went
but
through
it's
a lot of
Legion.
effort to
Yeah, it's the
schedule
same
this
one.
one.
Yeah,
So.
I have two other things there, and just items on the action plan. So action plan item 6, making recommendations around the redevelopment of the town website. So there's some overlap there with one of the recommendations from the Heritage Advisory Committee, which was to involve Deborah Trask, the Heritage consultant, as part of that redevelopment of the website, so that she can contribute to the heritage
Those are
aspect.
complementary, though. I think.
Yes, right. Okay, I just don't want that part to get left behind. And then action plan item 7, the asset.
Nothing happened.
Oh, this is, I don't know what the countywide asset inventory is gonna look like. But because I was at a meeting of the Lunenburg Now Physician Recruitment Committee this morning, we were talking about the current complement, the current cohort of physicians who exist here in our community now, not the ones we're trying to recruit, but the ones we're trying to retain, that we consider them as assets, in the same way we consider assets under asset management. So I'm just throwing that out to the Economic Development Committee, that the physicians that we have in our county are part of the county-wide asset.
And I don't disagree with that at all, but because asset is always used for such a variety of different meanings. In this case, the initiative is about identifying developable and leasable commercial
Lands.
property.
Yeah. I've got the concept out into the air.
Mm. The big mantra in the 80s was that people are our number one resource. Right? Okay, let's go to.
I think I had-
That's it. Audit committee. I was not at the audit.
I had
Pretty
recommended, we had approved it in the agenda, and I don't know if it's 8.4, somebody sits under 8.5, but
I think it's immediately.
I put in
following.
8.
It's 8.5 for volunteers. That's the last one, Sean.
Oh,
After
okay.
the audit committee.
Oh, okay, so that.
Okay.
And I just couldn't type it in on the agenda because it's.
Oh,
a
okay,
PDF.
because I think in my note it was 8.5.
Yeah. Audit committee.
Just
Pretty well
Mayor, you
straightforward. I
sure?
think everybody was pretty pleased with the report, and then as you see, the 3 motions were passed, the utility, water utility, electric utility, and town general.
Yeah.
So passed, I think everybody was pleased with the report and the work that staff has been doing, putting that together for Deloitte, and wait and see what goes on next year. Of course, this year's a lot earlier than we usually do get it. It'd be nice if we could get it up another month or 2, but I think we did well this year to have that done.
We are, I think, hoping, and we got to work out the new service letter again if we stick with this auditor or come back with the council with a recommendation that we go to tender. But we are hoping that whoever is doing the audit, that we can get it done by the end of July.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a lot better than what it used to be. We've been sitting here in January, February.
Yeah.
so these motions are highlighted because we do need to make them over again.
Oh, do we?
Starting at that word.
Okay.
I'll go.
Councilor O'Neill. Oh, good.
Okay,
No, it doesn't matter.
recommend that council approve the 2018-19 water utility financial statements as presented.
Moved, seconded by Councillor O'Neill.
So we don't have the final financial statements, right? The financial statements aren't here. They're not. They haven't even been tabled yet, have they? All we had was draft
Draft.
preliminary.
These are drafts that were presented.
Yeah, but why do we need to make a motion on a draft financial statement that's gonna have? We're just gonna
Actually,
They
yeah.
said
just
they
join
were
it.
gonna change
Yeah, like we're not approving anything. There were a bunch of changes that are
And
getting
there's-
made after the audit
There
meeting.
should have been something that was forwarded out between now and then, but we.
But it
guys
hasn't.
haven't
Okay.
done
They
it.
said they were
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah.
Well,
I withdraw my motion.
Well, it's
I think
gonna
we
be
just
problematic
defer-
if we don't, I
Why?
mean, I know it's tricky, but well, we'll be in the situation we were last year, which we were in, and it's fine. Which is that we
You
won't
can't-
have them approved
yeah,
by the
you
deadline.
can't
We
appro-
didn't have them approved by the deadline last year. So.
Well, you can't approve financial statements that you don't have.
If we don't have them approved by the deadline because we followed the normal procedure, right? Then we gotta change how we're doing it to get them done in time. I agree with Councillor Feeney that we cannot approve these.
So the audit committee meeting was the 9th, no? Right?
I thought he was gonna have them up the middle
The
of
ninth.
next week.
He did. He said he.
So that meeting was, I believe that was the
So they
9th.
must have gotten some complications, which is even more of an argument for Joe's point that we need to
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
building
Yeah.
document. So we'll bring these forward to
I mean, we can do-
Next
October
meeting.
9th or whatever. The next
I mean, when
meeting
is the deadline? The 30th?
The 30th, but we missed it by 4 months last year.
4 days won't hurt.
So I know at the Joint Services Board Finance Committee meeting a couple days ago, there was still a lot of back and forth between Deloitte and Grant Thornton on T's and C's on the Joint Services Board's financials, but most of all of the salient points that would ripple through to our statements looked like they were in good order. So I mean, it might just be a timing.
So,
It might be just a timing issue.
well, our meeting was last
Alright.
Thursday, so it's only been a
So
week.
we'll defer that item for the next council meeting.
Or is
Yeah,
that
if we get the report.
I mean,
If we get it, I mean,
if they come in, Dylan, to your satisfaction, we can always get together and have a
We
20-minute
could, but I
approval.
mean,
or
August
whatever.
9th or October 9th or 8th rather is they're not. I mean, they're going to be digging through some of the others. They're not. The province will not have time to do anything with it. I think we just accept that this got jammed up a little bit and push it off to the next meeting.
okay. We have Councillor Bain.
Okay, just before I go very briefly into the cemetery committee, I let it, it was my own error because it kind of went by me. But the Economic Development Committee had been traditionally meeting at 3, we changed it back to 1, and there had to be some clarification, and I had requested Councillor O'Neill, who chaired that meeting, to get clarification. My understanding is it is now 1 o'clock, that that meeting will be held. And the next meeting will be on October the 16th, and Bob Uden is speaking at that meeting.
On what topic?
That's
I'm
just,
not gonna be here.
for some
I'm not gonna be
information.
here when he speaks, but that's- Yeah.
okay, well, that's for information for those.
Thank
Okay,
you.
cemetery committee, it was kind of an on again, off again arrangement. However, we were able to get our committee together, and the volunteers were recognized by the mayor giving them each a letter, presenting them with a letter signed by the mayor, thanking them for the effort they did. They literally put in, I suppose, hundreds of hours working on the baby cemetery project, and it got to a certain point where there had to be staff input, and we had Chester come in, and the whole project was just a great success. So we had a majority of them were out to the meeting. Kevin, you attended that, took some pictures, and we're hoping that there will be some press in maybe next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
And I did have these minutes, and sorry, I didn't type them up, so they'll be on your next one. I'm
that's
just
fine.
looking now and seeing this was in between those other 2 meetings. So
That's
it's
okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for bringing it
was
up
that we
anyway.
did.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Okay. We have no new business?
Mayor, may I ask for an indulgence under the topic of new business that pertains to some baby students and other members of the community, and also information that some people in the room may be interested in with regards to activities happening tomorrow.
And you can always procedurally under new business talk about things that are purely for information.
Okay,
So.
thank you. So for information, I'm really You know, as a rural oceanside municipality who has declared a climate emergency in this province, in fact, we're the first town, first location after Halifax in the province to do so. You know, I think it's rather meaningful to me that tomorrow at noon, in support of the global climate strikes that are happening, the 3 churches are going to be ringing their bells. And so I just wanted to encourage anyone who is not able to get into Halifax or has other plans, if you do have a moment to sort of notice that tomorrow, and some people will be gathering in front of the churches, that would be.
Are citizens actually planning to come together in front of the 3 churches?
I don't know of anything officially organized. Other people might have more information, but I do know several people within my own circle that are. Do you have other
Yeah, well,
information about that?
no, it's the same here, it was pointed out to me, and I know some people that are going, and the question was, is the Baptist church, do they have a bell, and are they gonna ring it, I don't know. I couldn't answer.
Okay.
We always talk about the 3 churches when we really have 5.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know why they're the icon. Anyway.
So I really wanted to point that out because I think that it is a very big and special day for a lot of the students. It is a PD day at Bayview School tomorrow, so no one has to officially skip school tomorrow.
It was a scheduled.
It was a
PD day.
scheduled PD day.
Okay.
So I did confirm that with the school that is fully unrelated to the climate
The
strike.
event.
It's a lucky coincidence. There are major activities happening down in Halifax that a lot of our residents are making great efforts to carpool and go together.
There was one in Bridgewater.
There's a Jessica Hepburn has organized, the NDP candidate federally, has organized a picnic in Bridgewater as well as a march. And my understanding is there's also a Petite Riviere has a yoga event and a march. There are people all over this region who are really rising up to make their stand, and I would just like to celebrate the residents of Mahone Bay who are doing that tomorrow.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. Councillor Carver.
I'll be in the city tomorrow, so I'll miss all of that. But I did have the impression that people, or at least some people, could actually take a turn at ringing the bell. That was that
I wanna
came
do
across
that.
to me from Father Chadwick Charles on Facebook and exchange. So
Fantastic.
he said, come on down and ring the bell. So
Spent my youth ringing the bell every morning for mass at 7 o'clock for 7:15 mass.
And I would suggest respectfully that if anyone is participating in these activities, or if anyone is ringing a bell in Mahone Bay, would you kindly get a photo of yourself doing that? I think it would be lovely to have that on the website. I would propose that.
Who's going to the asset
Unofficially.
management workshop tomorrow? Are
no, I'm going to something completely different, another
going?
board meeting.
No?
Well, and this one is mostly for us to share our
Yes,
experience
yeah.
with others, so I think you and I are going to share that, but
I'm at
it's not
Region
one of the
6
workshop
tomorrow.
sessions.
Yeah.
No, I know. Pardon me?
I'm at Region 6 tomorrow in Liverpool.
Yeah, and I had to go back.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
see
in a
you
board
said
meeting
you're
all
good.
morning tomorrow.
Yeah.
Won't be
I'm
bad.
at cooking burgers.
What?
I'm at the Irving cooking burgers.
Oh, that's right.
Well,
And
go over and pull the rope once.
fighting fires.
No,
Colleen and John are on.
Right.
I have the letters though, and like Judy's talked to her friends.
Yeah, yeah.
It's quite a discussion.
We're focusing our efforts on the other side with our wind farm and our solar garden and our greenhouse gas.
Car chargers.
Carbon footprint baselining and our car chargers.
We have a lot to ring bells about
Oh.
in this
Yeah, we
town.
do.
That's for sure.
We do.
After the meeting, I have to ask you a question that the guest speaker for the child. I think I sent you a memo.
Okay.
Dr.
Okay.
Susan.
In a
All right.
motion to go on
I can put it
camera?
underneath.
We do have one in camera item. Mr.
So moved to
CAO?
go on
Do you
camera
want
to
to do that tonight,
discuss.
Joe? It's kind of up to you.
Well, we'll make a brief. We'll be in and out in 5.
Okay.
I'm
Motion to go on
I'm starting now.
I just didn't want to put you on the spot.
No. I just.
Yep. Yeah, contract.
Contract. Contract?
Yep.
Second.
Seconded.
Oh, well,
All
we're
right.
deciding to go in.
All in favor?
Municipal